Last time, we talked about the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, but that was actually supposed to be a much larger expression of binding human rights commitments. During the drafting of that document, UN member nations couldn't come to an agreement on which rights should be included in binding treaties, and so two covenants were created instead of one.
The first of these was the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which sets out rights like equality before the law and freedom of speech. The second, which is what we're going to look at today, was the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. This international agreement sets out positive rights and services which nations are obliged to provide to their citizens. The first of these is the right to self-determination, including the right to determine one's own political status.
These rights include the right to work, which means that everyone must have the opportunity to earn a living through freely chosen work. Furthermore, everyone has the right to just and favourable working conditions. These include equal pay for equal work, safe conditions, paid holidays, and sufficient rest and leisure time.
Social rights outlined in the Convention include the right to an education. Primary education must be universal, compulsory, and free, while secondary education must be generally accessible and available in multiple forms. As well as this, the Covenant affirms the importance of social security and asserts the right of all people to access to social insurance and healthcare.
Article 15 of the Covenant outlines citizens' rights to participate in cultural life and to enjoy the benefits of scientific research and creative activities in their society.
Lots of rights outlined in this treaty are more complicated to actualise than rights like freedom of speech. Rights like those in the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights generally require the government to enact some kind of policy, like ensuring all people are equal before the law. Though of course these rights are complex and do face challenges, they are financially simpler to enact than something like implementing a healthcare system across a country or ensuring there are places in primary schools for every single child.
So these rights have posed a real challenge to governments who have signed and ratified the treaty. Fortunately, most UN member nations have signed and ratified it, although the USA and South Africa have signed the treaty but not incorporated it into their national laws. Additionally, many of the member nations that have signed and ratified the treaty have done so with their own personal caveats.
China excludes many of the labour rights afforded by the Convention wherever they conflict with the Constitution or national laws.
Egypt accepts the Covenant only to the extent that it doesn't conflict with Muslim Sharia law.
Indonesia interprets the right to self-determination as non-applicable to members of a sovereign nation-state.
As well as these examples, many other nations limit the applications of treaties which they have notionally signed and ratified.
Do you think a nation should be able to call itself a signatory to a UN treaty if they're allowed to pick and choose which parts they abide by?
For more information about economic, social and cultural rights, check out the Centre for Economic and Social Rights. They're an international human rights organisation that works in advocacy and research into this area.
And as always, to check out who we are, go to www.anya.org.au.